Peace, now's the vibrate. Y'all know what it is. While it's fresh on my mind to just, add some more refining to, the perspectives, what I've already shared, you know what I'm saying? Again, my main thing I like to bring focus to is the law of correspondence, And as I'm reading the book, The Day of the Fish, like I'm catching all kind of aha moments about like some of my earliest DMT trips and a lot of my videos where I was talking about planting GMO seeds in the Garden of Eden, and literally also this connects with the whole Atlantis and Lemurian connection, where one civilization was more about being androgynous, you know what I'm saying? And one civilization favored more so, the masculine and feminine being in separate bodies and having sex and reproducing in that manner, you know what I'm saying? So one favored like parthogenic, parthenogenesis as a form of, creation, and a group that preferred more so like external sex as a form of creation. And, with all of these stories, I'm laughing because I'm like, I always use the as above, so below perspective, but like from the perspective of being a cell in the body of a being. Like, say, for instance, how does it feel to be, I was looking up, so say, for instance, hermaphroditic or androgynous energies, and more so looking at hermaphroditic like animals or parthogenic animals that basically can, change their, their quote unquote gender, you know what I'm saying? And in essence, change their gametes, AKA like their sexual reproductive cells as far as like sperm or eggs, and there's different types. But I'm like, how would it feel as a cell? Like if I was a cell in the body of a being that could be masculine at birth, but then feminine later on down the years, how would it feel to be a cell in that body? How would it feel to be a citizen in the world that would change from, complete masculine to feminine? Or how would it feel to be in a world where there's a mixture of both masculine and feminine and its reproduction from one being? Like, how would it feel to be inside that being? Like, how would the cells inside that being work? And again, using the movie Osmosis Jones as a reference, because like, it's funny because it helps for us to kind of really, make, sense of it all when you could simplify it into normal actions, you know what I'm saying? So instead of making it, instead of making it into this mythological, like mysterious story, like you could break it down into, the simplest aspects. So say, for instance, like with aliens, like what is an alien? Well, just look at it from the perspective of your body, like as above, so below, as within, so without. If your body is like a planet, then what's alien to you? Other people's thoughts, you know what I'm saying? That's an alien. What else is alien to you? That one just kind of comes first and foremost and simply, you know what I'm saying? But, instead of the like, aliens is, it was a mythological story and this, that, instead of like taking that route, which again, like the reading and stuff is helpful. But again, like when you could use the law of correspondence like this, man, it could just slice through a lot of, theories and stuff like that pretty quickly with a lot of clarity. You know what I'm saying? And again, just off of the fact that, within this realm, the truth remains that the 7 universal laws, or what some may call the 7 hermetic principles, really do stand as law in this realm. Like, again, like it ain't no change in the law of vibration. There's no change in the law of polarity. Like it is what it is in this realm. Like you're going to have hot water and you're going to have cold water. You know what I'm saying? Like that's as law, you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't change within this realm at the least. If you want to say the 7 universal laws ain't for the whole universe and it's just for this realm, that could be true. But just definitely for sure having to acknowledge the truth of how those laws do affect this experience being in this realm. But again, like the law of correspondence is like, how would it feel to be inside of a being when they having sex with another being? Like, and that's another aspect of an alien situation going on too. Like the feminine body, in essence, is having something alien come into it, quite literally, you know what I'm saying, as I said. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's an alien experience, you know what I'm saying? Like having sperm go into the womb, you know what I'm saying? That ain't never been a part of the womb's natural habitat before, like naturally, like the female wasn't born with sperms in her womb, just eggs. You know what I'm saying? So, that's somewhat of an unnatural experience in essence. It also made me look at just the deeper perspective of like, honoring anytime we plant seeds and even asking the earth, like, hey, earth, can I plant these seeds? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to just rape you and start, AKA just like grow a garden without consent, in essence. Like I try to grow a garden without consent, because literally that's in essence what rape is like trying to grow a garden, without consent in so many ways, you know what I'm saying? Not to make fun of, rape in any way, form, or fashion, because it's not nothing to laugh at, when you think of like some of the difficult situations people been through dealing with that. So I don't want to, make a little light of it, but like that's not to take away the toughness of dealing with that. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, what it feel like? That would feel like aliens, like an alien invasion. If I was a cell in a woman's body, especially if I was a cell in the womb of a woman's body while she was having sex, and a man ejaculated, like I would think there's an alien invasion. Like, what are all these white beings? You know what I'm saying? These beings, the white light. You know what I'm saying? Coming into, this wound or this world, quite literally, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are these beings? You know what I'm saying? And, again, like, if one was to be like, oh, that's far-fetched, you being far-fetched. Well, the law of correspondence remains true. So as above, so below. So I don't see how that's far-fetched. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's proven through, science and spirituality that the law of correspondence is true. You know what I'm saying? So that analogy would, also, align with truth. You know what I'm saying? And not be so far-fetched. So it's like, all right, every time Earth, or the being that we in have sex, that's literally spoken of like as the flood or the deluge. And reason why you have to be grounded, because there are, alien entities or new sperm coming into the realm, you know what I'm saying? Or you know what I'm saying? Something of that nature, without knocking anybody's sexual orientation, like if we were in, a homosexual male, or if we were in a homosexual female being, how would that experience be as a cell in that body? You know what I'm saying? But, because quite literally a lot of this all goes to, again, like, people, in essence, like, finding the right vehicle, or what's the best way to operate a vehicle, or what's the best type of vehicle to have and operate within this realm. You know what I'm saying? And what is the best vehicle that would allow for you to also maintain your memory of, being infinite. You know what I'm saying? On a simple level, because again, a lot of this comes down to DNA. There are some beings that don't want no mixing with the DNA. They want the perfect DNA. There's some beings that don't mind the mixing of DNA. You know what I'm saying? And again, like, what also just came to me as of recently, I was seeing a bunch of shows and movies that was like bringing up the sword and the stone. And, I'm like, all right, symbolically, the sword, is the words, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the words and the stone are, looking at the stone is also like the flesh, you know what I'm saying? Because again, you got stone, or you got metals, you got iron in your blood, you know what I'm saying? You got carbon with the melanin, you got certain aspects of copper in your body, you know what I'm saying? Like a stone, you know what I'm saying? And so the sword and the stone is like the word in the stone, or the word in the flesh, and the words that's in our flesh, in essence, is our DNA. You know what I'm saying? Our DNA is basically like, words, you know what I'm saying? Different little combinations of vibrations or words, you know what I'm saying, that carry a certain energy. Again, also kind of like a little constellation, in essence, inside of our body, you know what I'm saying? But the words in the flesh is the DNA, you know what I'm saying? The unspoken words, vibration, music, or sound of the DNA, basically, you know what I'm saying? And when I say the word is God, you know what I'm saying? In essence, it's also speaking to the perspective of like your DNA lineage is like God, in essence. Because quite literally, your DNA lineage and what you were born from, or your source, like, when we say God and we also use the word source, it's no coincidence that, that's another option for the word God or goddess is source, energy, you know what I'm saying? Because the source, or your DNA lineage source is like, your source or God or goddess, you know what I'm saying? In so many ways, because in a lot of cases, just the parent, that's why the parents, like we'll treat, like a baby, like we treat our parents like a god, in essence, you know what I'm saying? Like, our mama, breastfeeding us or feeding us in general, you know what I'm saying? It's like being taken care of by God, our goddess, So, but literally, you know what I'm saying? Like the earth changing, you know what I'm saying? It's connected with a body changing, you know what I'm saying? But this, again, in reference to the book, The Day of the Fish, where they were talking about like 8 ancestors. And basically it was like, again, a sex experiment or a genetic experiment with androgynous beings. And they end up creating like a non-androgynous being. So like a being with only one sex. And since the androgynous beings were more feminine that one separate non-androgynous being that was created was a masculine being, and this gets into the whole jackal, dog, and the whole connection with Thoth, trickster, Jehudi, Legba, Yadala, Brahmin, like that whole, all that, you know what I'm saying, all connected. But basically with the 8 ancestors, they were like, one of them, the mistress of speech, had the best blend of DNA for a new mode that was also human, and realizing like on an ancient level, like basically when you get deeper into it, what is called a fallen angel literally was to not be androgynous again. And you see that changes the perspective. Like, it's no longer just like, oh, something that's falling from the sky. Because actually, a fallen angel, quite literally, is falling from the water in essence. Like a lot of the ancient beings were more so, in the water first. You know what I'm saying? So the fall was from the water to the land, and from the water underneath our feet, at least from our perspective of the way our equilibrium aligns in this moment, where we see what's under our feet as bottom and what's over our head as the top. You know what I'm saying? In alignment to that referencing, again, a fallen angel comes from underneath and not above. You know what I'm saying? As most would think, like, oh, a fallen angel fell from the sky, more so fell from the sea, more so like a androgynous being, and that's also looking at what is considered heaven and what's considered, quote unquote perfect, because what's considered perfect is, in essence, to some extent, we say perfect, quote unquote, is being androgynous. It's like the masculine and feminine balanced in one body. But you start to see, like, throughout all ancient texts, that things become opinionated in the sense of what's right and what's wrong or what's best. You know what I'm saying? Again, masculine energy and patriarchy, what's best is raising up the masculine energy, and a matriarchy, what's best is raising up the feminine energy. You know what I'm saying? So like, you gotta be aware of that whole duck season, rabbit season dynamic that may exist within, ancient texts, due to the winner of the war telling the story, or just the person who, has more ancient resources or control over ancient resources could tell a story, you know what I'm saying? Or tell whatever story they want. In the case of like Vatican, where they got like the truth, but they tell you other stories, you know what I'm saying? But they could monopolize that because they holding a lot of the artifacts that would actually help you to know that they lying in essence, you know what I'm saying? So, it's kind of like that type of energy. But again, like the first 2 ancestors in the book, or the first 4, if I'm not mistaken, because it was 8 of them all together. So like the first 4 was more masculine, still hermaphrodites, but more masculine, and then the last 4 was like more feminine, and they could only breed in certain ways. So again, the mistress of speech was like the 7th ancestor who had the best blend of pneumo and human DNA. She was, in essence, like it was an androgynous being with more of the feminine vibe, like the original, pneumo beings. You know what I'm saying? So in essence, like, again, you start to see like what's considered heaven, in essence, or what's considered like perfect, or what's best was being like a androgynous feminine. So literally, like, even though, before, so, and that's where you have to kind of, again, be open-minded and just understand, like, all right, so that means that they literally demonize anything outside of that, whether it was bad or good or not, you know what I'm saying? So quite literally, like, the moment that androgynous being that was more masculine was born, that was automatically considered bad, whether it was something completely bad or not, you know what I'm saying? And hence, though you kind of just listening to the words of somebody else tell a story, and just that alone, you know what I'm saying, you kind of miss out on the whole story, or really getting the, you know, the deeper true perspective of what's going on, you know, holistically, you know what I'm saying? And you wouldn't see the back and forth, but actually become a part of the back and forth. Like, instead of looking at the like standing back and be like, all right, you know, this is just masculine, feminine energy kind of playing duck season, rabbit season, you know, of like which one's the best, you know, compared to like being in it, where you like, yeah, it's duck season, oh, it's rabbit season. Like, instead of being in the duck season, rabbit season, you're kind of able to observe and see like, wait, hold on, that's the whole little battle of what's been going on, you know what I'm saying? So you could have a different, you know, type of approach, and, you know, like you do things differently when you have, you know, again, like more of that awareness of the, you know, the deeper truth in that essence. But again, the first and second ancestors were hermaphroditic, but they were more of the masculine type. And say, for instance, the second ancestor was like the one with the more masculine and undesired DNA. You know, the second ancestor had like the most undesired DNA, and the second ancestor was designated to mate or breed with the seventh ancestor, aka the mistress of speech, you know, the one who had the best DNA for a pneumo hybrid, you know what I'm saying? Because the seventh ancestor, or the mistress of speech, was still a hybrid, but she was like the perfect type of androgynous hybrid, you know what I'm saying? While the second ancestor was like more of like not the best, more masculine, you know, more kind of separate from the androgynous perspective than, you know, the others, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, at a certain point, the first ancestor, which was a kind of more masculine, and the second ancestor, which is a little more masculine, androgynous, but a little more masculine nonetheless, you know, they started having sex with each other, you know. And that made me think of, like, again, like the beginning of, like, you know, some forms of let's just say, like, because some religions you could see like, if you look at it from start to end, that, I'll just say from, like, throughout its history, that it went from a shift of masculine to feminine, or feminine to masculine. You know, like, you could see that shift in some religions, but in some religions just represent one side of that shift. You know what I'm saying? So, like, most Christianity represents, you know, especially Roman Catholic, most of that represents the patriarchy, raising the patriarch or the masculine energy up. You know what I'm saying? Because also, again, like, I thought of, like, again, I used to always bring up, like, the cross. You know, the cross literally symbolically is two phalluses or two penises, you know, representing, you know, quote unquote death. And again, in essence, you could see like the quote unquote experiment, because, you know, again, like, sometimes some experiments, when they talk about, like, you know, like, oh, it was this atomic bomb or a nuclear bomb and stuff like that, you know. I think about it, even before you go deep, like, a nuclear bomb is literally like, you know, the shifting and changing of atoms, you know what I'm saying? And that's the same thing that'll happen, you know, like, it's kind of like a nuclear bomb if a being that's always been androgynous all of a sudden have sex with, you know, all of a sudden, or just in general, in existence, all of a sudden there's a being that exists that's not like the previous beings that existed. You know, that's almost like an explosion to the reality, you know, because that's you know, there's new, different you know, is a new set of atom combinations and elements being, you know, born and created in that process, you know what I'm saying? So it's also, you know, that energy as well. But again, you see how something that seems like a mythological vibe of like, oh, or, you know, like, hey, it flooded, you know what I'm saying? Like it was a flood. You know, the flood was probably when that being, you know, the world that we was in, the being that we're in, decided to have sex for the first time, you know what I'm saying? Like quite literally, you know what I'm saying? But again, the cross, the two phalluses, you know what I'm saying? And no coincidence that again in the day of the fish, you know, it breaks down, you know, that connection with the first and second ancestor, you know. And this also, I talked about, like, I did a video about seeds not too long ago, and I was referencing also, like, because they were having a bunch of shows coming out with like queens of like certain kingdoms in Europe, you know what I'm saying? I think you had the Serpent Queen was one I was watching, but it's just the theme of like forced arrangements for marriage or sex, you know what I'm saying? You see, like, again, like this is like a generational thing that constantly comes up, like, you know, should we force certain beings to have a scheduled marriage because their genetics line up a certain way, or is that too controlling, you know, like, and just dealing with the moralistic, you know, balance, or is that too controlling, or is that what's best for existence, or, you know what I'm saying, like, you know, and hence why the other themes start to come up, you know. It's like, you know, you got a genetic experiment or a sexual experiment gone wrong, so now somebody want to create a time machine to try to go and take out somebody's grandfather so the situation don't exist no more. But then that causes another beef or another ripple in time. You know what I'm saying? There's like all these different things. Then somebody resurrects somebody from the dead, and then that causes some shit. You know, like all the big themes of all the movies, mythologies, stories that we constantly see. You know, while a lot of it in essence could have like some of the same templates, you know, the basic same bottom line basic stories in a lot of cases, is because it's all coming from, you know, in essence, one story. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, yeah, you start to see like all of these different connections. And again, with the seeds, planting GMO seeds in the garden, again, it's like, you know, it's literally it's the sex energy. And whatever, like a while back when I brought up from my own meditative experiences, I brought up, now I would use Yu-Gi-Oh as a reference, but back then I was using Pokemon as a reference, and how like the Devic Kingdom or / like the fairies and, you know, just the elementals in nature were kind of being used in an abusive manner, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like Pokemon, like, hey, fairy, go do this shit for me. Like, you know, without no type of respect or reverence, you know, for the other being's existence, you know what I'm saying? Because, of course, you'll hear, like, stories of, like, fairies being mischievous and stuff like that. But, again, it's like it ain't all mischievous and it ain't all horrible relationships when it comes to elementals. You know, with anything, it's like just knowing the nature of, you know, who and what you're dealing with, you know what I'm saying, could help for a relationship, you know, relaying, you know, the truths between each other, you know, as y'all relate to each other, you know, as you learn the truths about each other, it becomes easier to relate, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to us connecting with elementals, or, you know, or just people in general, you know what I'm saying? But the whole story with like Atlantis, like first you had Lemuria, and then Atlantis, and then Atlantis beings did some type of experiment that changed things. I feel like that experiment was a sexual experiment, and it was a sexual experiment that also caused the reincarnation process. It caused there to be I ain't gonna say astrology like that, like it didn't cause astrology, that ain't the word for it, but it calls for the reincarnation process. It calls for, like, again, like this plane of existence to be closed off and be governed by this system of, you know what I'm saying, of what we call astrology. You know what I'm saying? All these quote unquote deities, gods, goddesses are, I say it simply, you know, these different archetypes to kind of govern this will over, you know what I'm saying, over this realm. But like all that happened with a sexual experiment gone wrong, you know what I'm saying? Because again, the things operate completely differently in different bodies. Like, you know, like being in an androgynous body would be like a very different and strange, you know, and I even say strange, or more so, like androgynous being having to deal with being in a non-androgynous, you know, body. You know what I'm saying? That would feel so different. You know what I'm saying? If you're a cell that's used to being in a world of androgynous being instead of being in a world of either masculine or feminine being, you know what I'm saying? That's going to be like a whole different, you know, experience. And, you know, so again, just a lot of this simple stuff just like quite literally just goes to the simple perspective of, you know, planting seeds in the garden. And I think of like most of my DMT trips, and you know, for those of y'all that watch some of my old videos, like I brought up how I felt like, you know, again, there was this experiment and somebody snuck. I used to always use that, again, the same story y'all done heard, a lot of y'all done heard a bunch of times, but it was like, and again, I didn't read this in no book or nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? So this also, you get to see in real time somebody have an experience or share an experience. Of course, you have the, you know, you don't have to believe me, you know what I'm saying? But you know, if you trust in that I don't lie in my videos, then, you know, you get to see the truth in the fact that, you know, I had this experience within, you know, a internal journey, you know, and it told me these facts of what's in a book that I'm reading later down the line, you know what I'm saying, years later, you know what I'm saying, because I feel like this book literally is like the aha moments to a lot of like the genetic seed little downloads and visuals and experiences I had about that, you know, and again, hence why I have so many videos. Again, mind you also that I have so many videos on this subject, and again, like I haven't read a lot of books, you know, that speak to it, like the one I'm reading now, you know what I'm saying? But like I always would say, like, man, like something went wrong. First, I used to always have the, you know, when I question, like, well, you know, if we all was one or everything was perfect, you know, what would mess up like the perfection of the way things was going? And the answer that came to me quite literally was like the first time a being or a consciousness questioned what was going on, or the order or nature of things, was the first time things, you know what I'm saying, kind of, I was like, boom, I was like the bang of, like, I guess you could say like the first time a being became aware of what it was observing, or to ask a question of what it was experiencing, or the first time of being a form of consciousness, you know, question what it was experiencing and seeing, you know, or observing, was the first time, you know, that shift happened. But basically, you know, again, having that question come up during the DMT trip and being answered like that. But then again, like it was like also like in the beginning, because that's what I would do for my DMT trips. Like I would go in on scientific vibes. Like I would have a question, like a question or some questions ready before I would go on my trips, so I could, literally be diving for some like genuine gems and jewels. You know what I'm saying? Like a true scientist with it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't all just for like. I'm not necessarily, and I'm not knocking it if people like into like psychedelics on hitting the raves and the festivals type of vibe, to each his own. But I definitely like, because I feel like it's all scientific, no matter where you at, if you know how to observe and ground yourself properly, because I done had those moments of like, having trips like while I'm out and about, you know what I'm saying? But I always had that trip again where it was like, man, it felt like we all was conducting the experiment, and say we all, but I felt like it was like, if I never said it like this before, I say it like this now. Like it felt like, again, like 5 to 10 scientists, for lack of a better word, you know what I'm saying, working on this experiment. And it's from the perspective of a lab, you know what I'm saying, and like actual geneticists or scientists. But, it metaphorically, speaks, multiple layers and volumes beyond that. But that's just, again, like how I was interpreting it. But it was like, we was doing this experiment, so we, as like the most ancient beings to, exist, as far as once, no thing started to have experience other than just being all one, because remember, duality, even if you're in a higher dimension, if something has a name, you know what I'm saying, then in essence, it's a part of duality. Like even though it's a high vibration or more so from a higher dimension, remember, and this again an example of things are still a part of duality as long as it's not like all one. Like if everything ain't in a actual all one, just all no thing and one thing from that perspective, then there's gonna be some form of, duality in some way, form, or fashion. It's just from a different dimension, and again, like think of, start to have an accurate understanding of dimensions. Because again, like some people may feel like, oh, fifth dimensional beings is, like say for instance, like it's all love, and butterflies, just because it's a different dimension or a dimension that's higher than 3D. Again, a higher dimension just means literally a different dimension, like a different geometric shape, you know what I'm saying, could be formed, or you could have different viewpoints, our perspectives could be allowed to be had while in this dimension. Again, like 2 dimensions is like a sheet of paper, it only has length and width. Like that's what the dimensions are, it's the dimensions of length and width. And since it's 2 dimensions that are only possible, you know what I'm saying, this is a 2-dimensional, realm in essence. Because, like say for instance, quite literally as well, just simplifying it, whatever dimension a being is on ultimately just means that it could observe the previous dimensions. So like something that is a 3-dimensional being could observe 1D and 2D. A fourth dimensional being could observe 3D, 2D, and 1D. A fifth dimensional being could observe 4D, 3D, 2D, and 1D. You know what I'm saying? Like a ninth dimensional being could observe 8 dimensions, 7 dimensions, 6 dimensions, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and hence why tapping into the 9 dimensions is like being able to see the full picture, you know what I'm saying? But it's a viewpoint, you know what I'm saying? Like quite literally, and I gotta go on this little side tangent just a little bit since I'm talking on it, like with dimensions. Like you playing San Andreas. When you playing San Andreas, you're literally like a fourth dimensional being in essence. A really kind of 5-dimensional being. But you're a fourth dimensional being to the characters of San Andreas and what you're seeing on the screen as you're playing it. You know what I'm saying? And just because, for one, just because you're playing the game doesn't mean you created that game. So just because you controlling those characters on the game, and it may seem like you, again, controlling that world, like although you have the control of the world on San Andreas while you're playing it, doesn't mean that you're the creator of it. Let that sink in on metaphorical levels. You know what I'm saying? Let that sink in on metaphorical levels. Again, just because you have control over the game you playing, or say for instance, like use an example, San Andreas. If you playing San Andreas on your PlayStation, just because you have control over the world of San Andreas while you playing that game doesn't make you the creator of that game. Somebody else created not only the console that you're playing, that that allows for you to interface with this game, but then also somebody wrote the software. Somebody else created the software. So quite literally, just because you're allowed to play the game, you know what I'm saying, and control certain aspects of the world doesn't mean that you're the creator of it. You know what I'm saying? This again could get to the confusion of angels, deities, and different types of gods and goddesses who, may have creator abilities or may have some levels of control over certain algorithms and certain parts of the game, but they still not the creator of the game in that sense of it. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like in that same analogy. You know what I'm saying? And now getting into the perspective of like, oh, it's all good. If it's higher dimensions, oh, it's all good. Lower dimensions, it's all bad. Like, no, again, it's negative and positive, yin and yang on every dimension, and like the positive and negative on every dimension. Now, to some extent, it's partially true in the sense of, you know what I'm saying, you're not able to, you have to be capable of vibrating on a frequency that's required for a certain dimension, but it doesn't necessarily mean, again, like with the all good, all bad. I'm playing San Andreas, I could be doing all my missions to save people. You know what I'm saying? Does it make me all good? Does it make me all bad? You know what I'm saying? Or again, like somebody playing in San Andreas and they just running over people and just shooting, just going everywhere, shooting up people for fun, like not going on their missions. You know what I'm saying? They're both players are like higher beings. So to the players within the game, within the TV screen of San Andreas, while you playing San Andreas, you know what I'm saying, you playing Grand Theft Auto, you playing San Andreas, and which I kind of caught a download as I said Grand Theft Auto, thinking about your vehicle, but anyway, anybody who's playing the game of San Andreas is going to be considered a being from a higher dimension of existence. And again, higher doesn't necessarily mean, all good or better. It's just an added dimension. So, again, like, is 4D better than 3D? And here this goes into the depths of like just the nuances of, psychology and the way people word things, and the psychology of people being able to have a quote unquote new perspective or a different perspective is considered something higher or good. You know what I'm saying? So that notion of being in a quote unquote higher dimension is something of, that's of great value, is because of the psychology of, the psychology, and also possibly becoming a culture, amongst people of looking at new experiences or having a new perspective, within your experience as something that is like highly valuable. So now to shift from 2D to 3D, so to not only be able to see length and width, but now I could see height. That's the only thing that changed in this. And I say the only thing I'm not saying the only thing that changed, like it, like it ain't like a big change, is a big change from a sheet of paper to walking around in an actual third dimensional realm or having a third dimensional experience, you know what I'm saying? But it's just simply, though, again, like a added dimension, like, again, length and width, 2 dimensions. You add height to that, now you got 3 dimensions. So now you get to experience height. But just because you're experiencing height while others are experiencing length and width only, does that make you better, or does that make you like a god over the 2D beings because you could now see heights? You know what I'm saying? Or now that because you could experience the dimension, because time is like a dimension. So you're in a 3D vehicle or body, and you're able to experience the dimension of time. You know what I'm saying? Which is different from, a third dimensional experience. Does that make you like, like the master of all the lower dimensions just because you have the experience of time that those in just the 3D perspective don't have? You know what I'm saying? Like you start to kind of see again, like just like with the fallen angel concept of like technically like most ancient scriptures are talking about beings coming from out of the water. So quote unquote fallen, and again, and this is also coming from beings who considered the perfection of their DNA to be, the perfection of their DNA considered to be, perfect. So is it technically fallen, or it's just a change? Because again, like, tell me the story holistically how it is. Because I'm one of those people, like, don't just tell me they were fallen angels who disobeyed God and this and that. And I mean, technically there is some truths to that. They may have disobeyed the order of their parents or like the God to them in that sense, and had sex when they wasn't supposed to, you know what I'm saying? Like again, in the whole story with Adam and Eve and that whole thing, but it's like, but what actually happened, it was a sexual experiment, or it was like these parents that only wanted their children to have sex in this type of manner. Their children didn't want to have sex in this manner, so they were considered bastards or fallen. You know what I'm saying? Like, like that's the true or holistic story, not just the whole like, well, Abraham You know, like just all that little, just the mystical. And again, that part is important as well. It's not to throw that out or not see, you know, those mythological stories as important, you know, because even for me to even get to this point, besides my own, again, DMT trips and own experiences, like, you know, it's like the mythology has helped for me to get to, you know, a holistic view, you know what I'm saying, you know, a solidify and refine a holistic view of the knowledge, you know what I'm saying. But, you know, it's just like, again, like the full true story, and again, in a relatable fashion, you know what I'm saying, because most human beings, you know, or most people on a human experience could relate to the family dynamic. And, you know, ultimately, you know, a lot of this, again, mythology is anatomy by law. A lot of this mythological stories is also anatomy. Like you having a mythological story of two beings having this, that, and the third going on, when it's literally the anatomical or anatomy story of what happens in the body after sex. You know what I'm saying? Like what happens in the womb after pregnancy. Oh, it's 3, you know, the triple darkness and 3 days of darkness, you know, for this amount of time. Oh, you mean that, you know, a woman was pregnant and she was going through 3 trimesters. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's also getting like the true, you know, or just the full, again, the other subjective truths that go into the objective truth. You know what I'm saying? Getting those little, you know, angular angles, angels, those little angles of perspective to kind of get the full 360 degrees. The whole perspectives, again, the full story. Let me bring this all in, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't want on 2 different tangents. Bringing this all the way back to, again, the story of, again, from the dimension breakdown, and again, like something from a different dimension could be of any type of nature. Again, like dimensions don't necessarily mean all good or all bad just because of a change of dimension, you know what I'm saying? And also realizing that, you know, just because something is non-physical, you know, or vibrates at a frequency that's less dense than the physical, doesn't mean that it's quote unquote heaven, or that it's all, or it's being back with the whole oneness or all God. Like as long as there is an individual experience, then in some form or capacity, you know what I'm saying, and there's not, you know, you're not back in that no thing or that oneness or, you know, of the all, you know what I'm saying, you're more so still having a unique experience within the oneness, you know what I'm saying. But the experiment in the DMT trip, and 5 to 10 scientists was conducting an experiment, but then it was agreement that nobody, again, touches the experiment without all of us saying, like, you know, like keeping a log, like, all right, hey, everybody, so-and-so going into the lab today to go try this experiment. All right, cool, that's cool. You know, all right, hey, today I'm going up in there and run this type of laboratory experiment. All right, cool. You know what I'm saying? But we had that type of vibe with this garden, you know what I'm saying? With this laboratory experiment, with this genetic gardening, you know, this seed planting, sexual experience we was experimenting with, you know. It's like, you know, they could even, again, we say scientists, you know, using big words like scientists, it could have been just simply like, all right, me and so going into the laboratory, aka the equivalent to a bedroom. You know what I'm saying? Me and so going experiment. You know what I'm saying? Today, you know what I'm saying? Let's get, hey, it ain't no fun unless we all get something. Let's all go into the laboratory today. You know what I'm saying? you can even see it from that perspective, you know what I'm saying? Again, like just the word sciences, but just literally like, sexual, people having sexual experiments, you know what I'm saying? Or sexual experimentation, but again, like, there was this vibe though that one day, I just always said one of the scientists, could have been maybe one or two or three, but like, let's just say 1 to 2 of the scientists decided to go into the laboratory and do something to the experiment that they felt was best for the experiment, or that they just felt was best from their perspective, without letting the others, know about, what they was going in there to do. You know what I'm saying? Now, bam, you already see like what cause and effect, what type of dramas and beef that just that alone, and again, you see that playing out in our experience, in our, karmic ancestral bloodlines down to, on a cosmic level, beyond the human experience, in essence, a lot of the same themes pop up. But again, it was because of, again, on the DMT trip I had, it was like literally like that just showed up like multiple different times. And it was one of my like, fairly prominent experiences. It's like, always remembering like it was, again, in this lab, somebody went into the lab without, it wasn't in the right agreement, and something happened. And how I always saw it too was like, whatever happened with the experiment, it caused some type of, duality. It caused some type of, experiment that caused us to have to go through something that would change the way the experience is, possibly forever. You know what I'm saying? Also on that level. And it was like an energy of like, some felt, again, like most of the popular opinion was like, no, that's just going to create some type of destruction and distortion. While the unpopular opinion was, although it may cause some destruction or distortion or, something harmful, there's going to be some form of evolution to come about. Because also, like in the book, The Day of the Fish, what it came up was like, the pros and cons to parthenogenesis, and how like you could evolve and you could recycle your energy, so you could have a strong, like, like you reproducing yourself. Like there's nothing from outside of you that's creating, this child. You know what I'm saying? It's all you. So it's literally like spitting out a clone. But again, the thing with cloning, from that perspective, like if you keep cloning the same person, will things evolve? Will there be some form of evolution if the same person keeps getting cloned and stays in the same environment constantly and never sees any different stimuli from what it always sees? You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody felt like things need to be shaken up, and although shaking it up, shaking this experiment up and making a few changes could be dangerous and detrimental, ultimately it would also have like some beneficial factors. You know what I'm saying? This kind of goes into that recent video I did kind of pertaining to this, again, like the responsibility of source, or source's responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Especially in connection with this realm, or this being that we're in, you know what I'm saying? Or the seed that was planted, you know what I'm saying? That responsibility, Saturn, karma, cause and effect, you know what I'm saying? Responsibility, the ability to respond to, previous traumatic triggers, you know what I'm saying? Your responsibility, your ability to respond can, cause you to have a different experience from the lesson loop. Again, because when you're triggered into a reaction, you're going to loop into the same, thing. But when you're triggered and you observe and you're able to respond differently, then you'll create a different experience, or you'll have a different experience internally at the least. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't see no big changes in your physical experience, you know, if you respond healthily to something that you normally would react a certain way to, you're going to at the least experience changes inside yourself, and like just a different feelings and points of view just from responding differently. You know what I'm saying? But again, just full circle and just simply closing out, you know, it was again like this experiment, you know. So all of this fancy smancy stuff is good, you know. I jokingly fancy smancy, but you know, all these different mythological stories, and they came from the stars. But again, I'm one of those people, like, I'm gonna stop calling Michael the Archangel Michael from a perspective of like, oh, the Angel Michael, once I find out that that's the fixed star Aldebaran. You know, like once I find out that Michael is Aldebaran, and you know, whatever angel is Regulus, and then another angel is Falmahalt, and the other angel is Antares. You know, once I find out that, like, you know, now again, it is, and this is where the open-mindedness is necessary. Like, yes, you know, once I find out that, I'm no longer like, oh, you know, Archangel Michael and this and that from that perspective. But I understand that, you know, because that consciousness was created in that way, or that egregor, you know, aka the symbology for Aldebaran became an archangel named Michael. You know, I know that goes with that experience, or, you know, that connection, you know. So I'm not gonna just throw it all out, but I know, like, all right, but, you know, you just kind of, you're calling upon the star Aldebaran. You know what I'm saying? And reason why I'm like that, because why make things symbolic and more confusing when you don't have to? Like, once you, like, if I've been spending my time confused about religion because of all of the symbolic, the layers of symbols and shit like that, then why would I keep some of those same, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I decode and find out that Solomon's temple is really about my body, then I'm not gonna keep it all, you know, layered up and decoded. Especially if I call myself, now this is the thing too though, if I call myself to be a genuine decoder, you know what I'm saying, and a genuine, hey, I'm here to share the truth, you know what I'm saying, and I ain't gonna keep, you know what I'm saying, giving the energy to like, oh, well, you know, Solomon was possibly real, or Solomon is a real person. And that all could be true again, but it's like, you know, part of the problem was that, you know, things were so symbolic to the point where it was a little confusing, and maybe that was necessary. Again, like, different things, now it's to vibrate, different things necessary at different moments. Maybe it was the best, you know, in certain moments to hide the truth, you know. Right now it's not, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm not gonna hold on to that many layers of symbology, you know what I'm saying? I would only, again, like, use it as a tool, where if I'm talking to somebody who comprehends the Bible, I could use it as a tool to tell them the truth through that perspective. But ultimately, telling the truth and getting to the underlying perspective, like, hey, Jesus is the Son, fucking 12 disciples is 12 zodiac signs, you know what I'm saying? Like, the truth of it, you know what I'm saying? Whenever you're talking about masculine people in most mythological stories, you're talking about air and fire. If you're talking about, in most cases, women, you know what I'm saying, you're talking about earth and water, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like getting to the meat of the story, because if you're still holding up too much of the symbology, then you're still kind of just making it confusing, you know. But hence the long videos and deciphering and like, you know, allowing for us to kind of make it, you know, like, for us to see, like, just to, you know, see the truth as clean as possible, you know what I'm saying, without too much of the extra stuff, you know, and understanding why the extra stuff existed and how it can be used in certain moments in a helpful manner, but then how ultimately it could just be holding on to the confusion that, you know, that it created in the first place around certain, you know, religious beliefs and why people do certain things. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, but yeah, I'm not even gonna go too much into, you know, that bam. But we'll get into some different talks, but just leaving it, we'll stop it there. You know what I'm saying? Just wanted to share that with the whole, again, just another perspective with the whole genetics thing, and you know how a lot of this is about basically planting seeds in the garden. Again, you know, there's multiple layers. It's more than just that, but that's, you know what I'm saying, one of the main aspects of it. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, if y'all could see. Notes. And then also, if you want the matter of fact, shout out to Sevenfold Mar for sharing the book The Day of the Fish. I also have it on PDF now, so if you don't get it from him, you know, I also have it on PDF as well. So if you're interested in that book, you know, definitely email me. But yeah, now is the vibrate, not too far in the future, not too far in the past. Right now.